I never believed in demons, at least not in the way old stories described them. My grandmother used to whisper warnings about shadows that fed on fear, but I always laughed it off as superstition. That changed the night I had my first encounter with one. It wasn't a dream, nor a figment of my imagination. I can still feel the weight of its presence pressing against my chest, suffocating me with a darkness I had never known. It was past midnight when I woke to an unnatural silence. The kind of silence that makes your heartbeat sound too loud, almost like it's betraying you to whatever is lurking in the dark. I sat up in bed, confused, because even the crickets outside had gone quiet. That was when I saw it. A tall, twisted figure stood at the edge of my room, its body cloaked in shadows that seemed alive, writhing like smoke. I froze, unable to scream, my body betraying me with a paralyzing terror. Its eyes were the first thing that truly broke me. They weren't human. Two glowing embers, piercing into my soul as if they knew every secret, every sin, every moment of weakness I had ever hidden. My breath hitched as it stepped closer, each movement impossibly slow, deliberate, like it enjoyed watching me crumble under its gaze. I wanted to run, to escape, but the weight of fear pinned me down, leaving me defenseless. The air grew colder with each step it took, my skin breaking into goosebumps as a foul stench of decay filled the room. Its long, skeletal fingers reached toward me, and the shadows clung tighter to its form, as though they were alive themselves. When its hand brushed against my face, it wasn't the cold I felt, it was fire, burning me from the inside out, igniting my veins with a pain I cannot describe. I wanted to scream, to beg for mercy, but my voice caught in my throat. The demon leaned closer, and for the first time, I heard its whisper. It wasn't a voice made for human ears. It was layered, guttural, vibrating through my bones, promising that this was only the beginning. The words slithered into me, binding me to a fate I couldn't yet comprehend. That night marked the end of who I once was. I wasn't just a girl anymore, I had become prey. My first encounter with the demon wasn't just a meeting. It was a warning, a cruel introduction to the nightmare that would follow me again and again, 13 times over. And deep inside, I knew there was no escape. Do you want me to continue the same way for the endless cycle of death, too? Death was never the end for me. It became a doorway, a twisted passage that kept throwing me back into the same nightmare over and over again. The first time the demon killed me, I thought it was final. I felt the pain, the burning in my lungs as the life drained from me, the heavy silence that followed as my heartbeat slowed to nothing. I welcomed the darkness, believing it was over. But when I opened my eyes again, I was lying in the same bed, staring at the same ceiling, my body whole, my heart pounding. The world hadn't changed, but I had. That was the beginning of the endless cycle. Every night, he came for me. The demon's shadow slipped into my room like smoke seeping through cracks, its presence suffocating me long before it touched me. Sometimes it killed me quickly, its claws ripping through my chest in one swift motion. Other times, it dragged out the horror, circling me, whispering words I couldn't understand, letting fear hollow me out before delivering the final blow. Each death was different, but the end was always the same. Pain. Darkness. Silence. And then, awakening again, trapped in the same place where it all started. I tried to fight it. I screamed, I begged, I ran until my legs gave out, but nothing changed the outcome. No matter how much I resisted, the demon always found me, always killed me, and always made sure I woke up to live it again. The cruelest part wasn't the dying, it was the knowing. I carried the memory of each death, every searing pain, every hopeless moment. My body healed, but my mind remained scarred, fractured by the torment of reliving my end 13 times over. Each cycle stole a part of me. I felt my humanity slipping away, piece by piece, replaced with dread and numbness. I began to wonder if the demon wasn't just killing me for pleasure, but feeding off the despair it created. The ritual felt deliberate, as though my suffering was the true purpose, not my death. The more I struggled, the stronger it seemed to become. By the 13th death, I was no longer the girl I once knew. I had become a shell, worn thin by fear, drowning in repetition. Yet, deep inside, a flicker of defiance refused to die. If the demon wanted me broken, then surviving, even in agony, was my rebellion. The cycle was endless, yes, but so was my will to endure. And I knew one thing: if I could suffer through 13 deaths, then somehow, I might learn to find the weakness in the monster that cursed me. Do you want me to also create the image prompts in the same horror style for this part, like we did earlier? The memory of those 13 murders lives inside me like scars carved into my soul. Each death was different, yet the terror was always the same, raw, unrelenting, and merciless. The demon never killed me the same way twice, almost as if it delighted in inventing new methods of torment, savoring every moment of my suffering. I can still feel each one as if they are replaying behind my eyelids whenever I close them. The first time, it pierced my chest with claws so sharp they tore through bone like paper. I felt my heart stop, my body convulsing in shock before the darkness claimed me. The second was slower. It strangled me, its long, skeletal fingers squeezing until the world spun and my cries dissolved into silence. By the third, I already knew what awaited me, yet that knowledge didn't soften the horror. It dragged me across the floor and ripped me apart, leaving me in pieces that I somehow felt even as life drained away. Each murder was a performance, and I was the unwilling audience to my own destruction. Sometimes it whispered in my ear before striking, words in a language older than time, words that made my blood run cold. Other times, it said nothing at all, letting silence weigh heavier than any scream. The fourth death came from fire. It set my veins alight with a touch, burning me alive from the inside. The fifth came from drowning in shadows, as though the darkness itself became liquid and filled my lungs until I couldn't breathe. By the seventh, I realized the killings weren't just physical, they were meant to break me piece by piece. It tore at my spirit, forcing me to relive the pain even after I awoke. The 10th was perhaps the cruelest. I remember looking into its glowing eyes as it drove its claw into me slowly, watching the life fade from mine while its grin widened. Each time I thought the end would be permanent, but instead I awoke again, whole in body yet shattered in mind. By the 13th murder, I no longer screamed. I had screamed enough to fill 1,000 nights, and the sound had become meaningless. The demon killed me with a cold, precise motion, almost ceremonial, as though it had achieved something with this final act. But as I lay in the darkness after that last death, I realized something: it had not broken me completely. Yes, I was scarred, terrified, and hollowed out, but somewhere deep inside, the ember of defiance still burned. 13 horrifying murders had not erased my will to survive. If anything, they had given me reason to fight back. Do you want me to continue the same flow for the next part, the demon's ritual of blood? The demon's killings were never random. I came to realize, they were ritual. Every death was not just an act of cruelty but a step in something far darker, a ceremony woven with blood and terror. It was not enough for it to take my life. It needed my suffering, my essence, my blood, again and again. Each time I died, it performed its grotesque ritual, and I was forced to witness fragments of it even as life slipped from my body. After my third death, I noticed a pattern. The demon never left my room covered in blood, it took it with him. I would see the shadows curl around my body like a shroud, lifting the blood from the floor, the sheets, even my skin. It gathered it as if it were precious, glowing faintly in the dark, pulsing like a living thing. My blood was not just spilled, it was claimed. By the sixth death, I began to hear chanting. Its voice was layered, guttural and deep, as if countless voices spoke in unison. The air thickened when it chanted, the shadows around it writhing like serpents. My blood would drip from its claws into a bowl made of bone, carved with symbols I didn't understand. The moment the first drop touched that vessel, the walls seemed to breathe, the shadows shivering in hunger. It wasn't just killing me, it was feeding something else. The ritual grew more terrifying with each cycle. Sometimes it painted my blood across the walls in symbols that burned with a faint, crimson glow. Other times, it smeared the blood across its own chest, as if binding my life to its form. I began to wonder if I was nothing more than an offering, a sacrifice meant to strengthen it. My body became the altar, my blood the ink that wrote its wicked prayers. The most horrifying part came during the 12th death. As I lay dying, I saw its shadow split into many, circling the room, whispering in voices that echoed mine. It was as if the demon had stolen fragments of my soul, weaving them into its ritual, making me part of its chant. My blood wasn't just fuel, it was becoming its language. By the 13th ritual, I knew the truth. I was not dying for myself. I was dying to complete something ancient, something that demanded blood spilled again and again until it was satisfied. Yet even as the demon bathed in my blood, as though it purified and empowered him, I felt a shift. His ritual may have been meant to bind me, but in some twisted way, it also bound him to me. My blood was inside him, my soul entangled with his ritual. And in that realization, I found a spark of hope. If he needed me this much, then perhaps I could turn that need into his downfall. Do you want me to finish the cycle with the last part, my fight for escape and survival, in the same style? Survival became more than instinct, it became my obsession. After 13 deaths, 13 rituals, I understood one truth: the demon needed me alive only to kill me again. That was its power, its hunger, its endless game. But if I could break the cycle, if I could deny it what it craved, maybe I could reclaim myself. My fight for escape began not with strength, but with a single thought: I refused to die for him anymore. The first step was endurance. Each night, when I felt the shadows creep in, I forced myself to stay calm. Fear fed him, I could see it in the way his eyes burned brighter when I trembled. So I learned to hold my breath, to still my shaking hands, to let the terror sit inside me like a caged animal without giving it voice. He wanted my screams, but I gave him silence. That was the first small rebellion. The second step was observation. I began to notice cracks in his ritual. The bowl of bone never stayed full, it emptied itself as though feeding something unseen. The symbols he carved into the walls glowed, but faded quicker when I resisted him. The more I denied him fear, the weaker his shadows seemed to grow. Pain was unavoidable, but my will was mine to control, and that became my weapon. One night, when his claws pierced my skin again, I did not fight the pain, I welcomed it. I let it burn through me like fire, and in that moment I felt something shift. The shadows recoiled slightly, as if confused. That was when I understood: if my suffering was his power, then my defiance could be his undoing. I would not give him despair, I would give him rage. The final step was escape. On the 13th night, as the ritual began again, I forced myself to move before his shadows closed in. I ran, not blindly, but with purpose, toward the faint crack of moonlight seeping under my door. Every step felt like dragging chains, but I pushed harder, fueled by the memory of every death. The demon roared, the sound shaking the walls, yet I did not stop. My blood dripped behind me, marking a path, but I didn't care. When I reached the door, I threw myself through it, and for the first time I felt the night air against my skin. I was not free yet, the demon's hell still followed, but I was alive, outside the prison of my room, outside his ritual circle. I had broken the pattern. My survival was no longer his choice, it was mine. And though I knew he would come again, I also knew this: I was no longer prey. I was the hunted who had learned to fight back. Would you like me to now combine all 5 parts into one continuous horror story so it reads like a complete narrative?